a lot of the old paradigms in TradFi and moving towards, the new paradigms of decentralization in block space. Um, and we're going to see this shift enable all sorts of new financial products and services, like what I was talking about: fractional ownership, automated compliance. And this block space, these projects, they really do bridge the gap between TradFi and DeFi. And as far as financial inclusion goes, um, having block space accessible to billions of people, it really opens up many more opportunities in finance to, not just hundreds of millions of people, but to billions of people across the world. And there's no doubt in my mind that, these Ethereum ETFs and this influx of institutional grade assets into the DeFi ecosystem is going to strengthen it and not weaken it. And so I just wanted to highlight four RWA plays, because I think that tokenization is this new narrative that we're going to see gain a lot of traction over the coming 6 to 12 months. What we've seen so far in terms of narratives has been, definitely memes for sure. AI has been a massive narrative. I think RWAs is the next narrative. These new layer ones with TON and NEAR, maybe not new, but starting to gain traction. So I think that the next narrative is RWAs. And so I just wanted to highlight a couple. MakerDAO has their Maker RWA. And all of these assets here, Maker RWA, Ondo Finance, Maple Finance, and Goldfinch, these I highlighted because they all have concentrated liquidity and V2 full range liquidity pools that we can actively enter on Uniswap. So that's why I wanted to highlight these. So Maker RWA, they are bringing real world assets on chain. They're bringing real estate on chain, working to tokenize real estate. So very interesting here. They're not the only project doing this, but they're the ones that have the largest pool on Uniswap on ETH mainnet. Ondo Finance, these guys are bringing, tokenized treasuries. So US treasuries, they're bringing on chain here. So tokenizing treasuries, tokenizing different bonds. We might even see, the euro dollar market come on chain. Maple Finance, these guys are tokenizing credit markets. And Goldfinch is doing something similar with tokenized borrowing, so that, businesses maybe in third world countries have access to credit markets that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So I just wanted to highlight these four. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just a handful of RWA projects. And I want to start to get everyone exposed to, how RWAs are really opening up this world of tokenization to, billions of new investors globally. This is a big deal. Now, let's check in on our ETF flows. We've had 2 consecutive weeks of really positive flows. Net flows remaining just below 500 million, but really positive here. 2 solid weeks of positive flows. Notice also GBTC, this reddish pink color, which was the big seller of Bitcoin for the first couple of months after the ETFs, the Bitcoin ETFs launched, it is no longer a big seller here. So, I think that the risk now is to the upside for Bitcoin and for ETH and for everything else. And, the thing that I'm looking out for, Colin, is, what is going to be the trigger for alt season? Because alt season, you guys and gals, alt season is when, we see the 10 or 20% per day moves every single day for weeks in our favorite alts. And that might sound like, crazy, but it's not. If you've been through a couple of cycles, you've seen this play out before. And so what we must make sure that we do is we must be in position with our bags loaded up prior to the start of alt season. And what does the start of alt season look like? How can we get a little bit of a heads up? Well, I'm tracking two charts here. Number one is Bitcoin dominance, and number two is the ETH BTC ratio. And what we witnessed over the last week here in Bitcoin dominance is a breakdown from this trend line support. So we had trend line resistance. This is long-term resistance above and shorter term support below. We broke below it over the last 24, 48 hours or so, bouncing back higher today by a little bit. But this is what I want to bring everyone's attention to. You see this big breakdown in Bitcoin dominance? When we see something like this take place, that signals the start of alt season, which I believe will also coincide with Ethereum moving higher against Bitcoin on a percentage basis, meaning Ethereum starting to outperform Bitcoin on a percentage basis. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, I believe, will both appreciate against the US dollar, but Ethereum by a larger percent. So you'll see Ethereum outperformance. And you'll see that at the same time that you see Bitcoin dominance break down. I think that's the trigger for alt season, and we need to have our bags packed before that happens. We're not quite there yet. It's getting close though. And these Ethereum ETFs could accelerate the speed at which we get to alt season. So just want to throw that out there. And Colin, looks like we've got a couple of pools for this next week, man. Let's go through this.
Yeah, definitely, David. Hey, man, that's great information, man. You do such a great job of communicating it. And I wanted to add one quick thing about real-world assets as well, because you guys have seen that. I've been reading the cash flow quadrant for a while. And when I hear real-world assets, what I think about is access. That's the word that comes to me, access and opportunity. And so when I'm reading this cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, the main message of that book is to move from the left side of the quadrant to the right side. And that right side is businesses and investments, right? But really, when I read this book and I think about real world assets, what it tells me, and more so tokenization, right? Real world assets, but then tokenization of those real world assets. The tokenization piece is really like access. That gives me access to opportunities that I didn't necessarily have access to prior to this phenomenon, right? Prior to this new technology. And so when you're talking about these different projects in the overall scope of where we're seeing the narrative in the market go, for me, it excites me a lot, because when I'm reading this book, it's kind of funny, David, just real quick. In this book, he gives an example of a piece of real estate that he bought, a condo for like $28,000 or something. I don't know exactly when that was in terms of the year, but for me to go straight up and buy a condo, I'm 28 years old. At this point in my life, maybe that's not easily accessible to me at this point. But with tokenization and with these real world assets coming on chain, now through Maker RWA, maybe I can own a piece of a condo. Maybe it's not, $28,000 anymore, but I can own a piece of it. And so anyways, just want to add that as well, because it's a very exciting time. And I still think we're very early, but we're starting to see a foundation being laid where now I think this is going to bring a lot of people into the crypto and decentralized finance space. So just want to add that before we dive into the opportunities that we scoped out this week.
Yeah, so Colin, one last thing, being early in this, in the context of RWAs, I think that, look, I've seen a couple of guys hit those 20, 50, 100Xers, and, being early allows you to participate in massive gains like that, the potential for massive gains. So I just want to be in position. Should any of these projects really take off, I want to be in position. So just want to leave it with that.
Absolutely. And talking about being in position, let's talk about 3 pools that we found this week that I think would be solid plays for you moving forward here. So Render is our first one. Render USDC.